Hello, and welcome to Speaking Out on Financial Abuse. Stories of survival and hope after financial abuse in a marriage or romantic partnership. I'm your host, Lori G., and I am very excited today to have Acquania Escarne. She is a wealth strategist, financial coach, and host of the very popular podcast and blog, The Purpose of Money. Acquania helps clients across the United States build and maintain generational wealth through saving and investing. Her powerful and direct style of financial coaching also has made Acquania a sought-after public speaker as she helps others expand their mindset, business, and wealth through coaching programs, events, seminars, and workshops. Her podcast and blog, The Purpose of Money, is acclaimed for helping especially women of color get savvy about saving, investing, and building wealth through their own financial efforts and independence. Acquania has been featured in major publications like Black Enterprise and Equal Opportunity, a career magazine for minority graduates. She is also a finance freelance writer who has written for Wealth Noir and Foreclosure.com. Acquania, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, where in the world are you and where are you originally from?
Oh, that's a great question. I live in Virginia in good old United States, but I'm originally from Georgia. I was born in Savannah, raised in Clarkston, Stone Mountain area, and moved up to the DC area for college. And I've pretty much lived here ever since, except for when I lived abroad in multiple countries.
Where abroad were you?
Oh, where wasn't I? So I did 15 years in the Foreign Service as a diplomat. So
Wow.
as a diplomat, I lived in Haiti, I lived in Ecuador, and I lived in the United Arab Emirates in Dubai. But I also did a year in Italy in grad school. I've traveled to over 40 countries before I turned 40. So traveling the world is something I love. And I have one son born in Virginia and one son born in Dubai.
Was that your bucket list from like little kid? I am going to go see the world. I'm going to go see 40 countries before I'm 40 years old.
That is a really good question. It kind of was. So a little bit about me is that in seventh grade, my middle school went on a trip to Spain, and I begged my parents to be able to go, but they both were not super rich, and it was definitely going to be somewhat of a hardship. So what I did to sweeten the deal to get them to say yes was I had offered to raise my own spending money. So I sold candy on the school bus and to my classmates for months. And I raised enough spending money and my parents split the cost of the trip. But I went to Spain and I came back and told my mom, I want to live abroad and work abroad forever. And literally from seventh grade until I applied to colleges, all I thought about was an international career. And that led me to George Washington University in DC, where I actually was able to pursue it. So I am a focused person. You put an idea in my head and I will not let it go. And I enjoyed that career for 15 years, in addition to some other benefits, helping minorities get the opportunity to learn about the internships as well as the career themselves. And then being able to live and work abroad was pretty nice too.
Well, what was your own parents' relationship with money growing up? Sounds like you had a pretty solid foundation.
Solid, yes, but definitely saw it, the good and the bad. My mom was a full-time entrepreneur most of my life, and she did everything from sell life insurance to ATM machines and credit card services. And my mom was a solo entrepreneur all of that time. So I got to see the grind that comes with entrepreneurship. I got to see the positive cash flow months that came with it and everything in between. My mom definitely taught me what entrepreneurship could look like, but also some lessons that I did differently when I became an entrepreneur. For example, my mother never hired anyone but me. And so I did her admin data entry stuff, but I really know now based on my own experience that had my mom hired a coach, a team, a virtual assistant, which wasn't popular back then, she could have grown her businesses to way much more. But I still appreciate the lessons that I learned. And my dad, he spent 22 years in the Army, but then when he retired from the Army, he went to work for the government, just like me. And he did real estate on the side. So I saw and
Wow.
learned from him how to invest in real estate and the good and bad that can come with that. Because unfortunately, my dad had like 10 properties before 2008, but then the bubble hit and tenants stopped paying rent and it became a struggle to hold on to all of those properties. But again, I took the lessons learned and I did one better. So I still invest in real estate. I started out in rentals, but now I do commercial real estate like hotels and apartments. And I didn't give up because my dad kept me encouraged along the way and was like, even when real estate gets tough, you can pivot or you can find another way to be involved, but it's still a great way to make generational wealth. So my parents definitely didn't come from money, but they had the grit that was required to get through the tough times. And they also had a determined spirit to do more than one income stream and to be successful. So they are still my biggest cheerleaders. And they're also people I still go for guidance to, even if I have become more successful than they were.
Well, it sounds like your parents instilled the purpose of money into you as a small child. And in honesty, that's kind of unusual. My mom was one of those handing the kids the credit cards that go buy your school clothes and hide it from dad.
Oh,
So you have that. So you learned at a young age not to be scared of money. That
yeah.
as your show says, which is really all about you, is that money has purpose.
Yes.
And yet, frankly, women in general tend to be very scared of money. We often are taught to be passive about money decisions and that it's more of a man's world. Why do you think women especially tend to be afraid of money? And what does money represent, you think, more to women than it does to men?
My mom had a very different perspective because my parents were divorced when I was one. So my mom raised me. My dad traveled with the military and then moved to Georgia after he retired. And one of the things my mom always did, even if money was up or down, is be honest, right? And so even for lunch money, I used to have to write checks or I used to write
Wow.
my own checks, but my mom would help me because she would tell me where to write the name of who it's going to and then how to balance the checkbook so that that check is accounted for. And my mom has an accounting background, so she was always a numbers person. But that is
Wow.
how I really understood the value of the money has to be there or the check will not clear, right?
Hmm.
But my mom was also the primary breadwinner in my eyes because she was the person I saw handling money all the time. Now, granted, my dad was involved financially. He sent child support. He was definitely very present financially, but he didn't teach me a lot of my money lessons until I got older and we had money conversations.
Hmm.
And I talk a lot about how my dad gave me a copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert
Oh,
Kiyosaki.
really?
Yeah, when I turned 16. And that was his way of giving me all the money lessons in one book. My dad's not a big talker, so he would do large gestures like, here's a book, read it. And then I did. And so at 16, I started saving for retirement. I started trying to put a path together on how do I get this business and these other streams of income to retire early. So I was all about retiring early before I even heard about the FIRE movement or the financial independence and retire early movement. But in regards to your question, I've had different experiences when it comes to women and money. I do find people who are scared of it, but more often I find women who are the primary breadwinners and also the primary controller of the money because I work with a lot of single moms or
Hmm.
women who are head of household.
Hmm.
And I feel like it can go and then I've also seen the perspective you were raised in where I've seen wives who hide things from their husbands, who have credit cards their husbands don't know about,
Hmm.
or even in their name. And I'm like,
Hmm.
how does that work, Sway? Like,
Yeah, it was
you know,
bad. It
yeah.
was bad in
And
my
and
household.
it's not good behavior because at the end of the day, that money still has to be paid off somehow, some way, right?
Hmm.
And financial infidelity is real and it definitely causes long term effects on people's relationship, especially if it gets out of hand and the person accumulates way more debt than they can get out of. So I think I am a big fan of transparency and joint bank accounts, but I say that with caution, because if your partner is not a good person with money, they overspend, they get NSF fees, they incur way more expenses than they can actually pay for, and it becomes a problem that impacts your ability to pay your bills, then you shouldn't have joint bank accounts, right? But that could be something that you try to get towards, but it's going to require communication and a lot of times a third party, a neutral third party who can talk to you about your finances and help the two people on different pages get on the same page, if that makes sense.
Well, and I think the worst combination, and I saw this in my household, is you have the parent breadwinner who is the practical, sees the purpose of money as just as you're describing it. And then you have the other parent who really and truly believes money equals emotional validation. And that's what I have finally learned as an older adult, being able to be more objective about my upbringing, is that it was like a game almost. It's like, he pays off the credit cards, you go out and get more. And then 10 years later, he's paying them off again. And this went on my entire life. It was literally normal for me. It was normal for me to hide my school clothes in the trunk until dad's not home. And then we would have our school clothes for the fall. This was literally what my mother did every year. And I never thought of it as financial abuse. Now I can clearly see what it is. But I think, kind of going back to my question, I think it's how some women view money. I think that it's about emotional security. It's about emotional status. And I think, since you talk, to such a huge audience of women, do you find a challenge, kind of going into my next question about going back to your big dreams so you can want to generate more wealth, getting women out of the mindset that this is not an emotional thing. Money's not your friend. Money's not your boyfriend. It's not your girlfriend. It's literally something that can ruin your life if you're not careful. And I am at that place.
Yeah.
So
how
do you get women out of that mindset that this is not?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, well, one, I think dreams motivate us. They help us have a sense of something to live for and to work towards. And I am a goal-oriented person, but you have to first know what motivates you. I personally believe money is a tool, and it is a tool that we are supposed to leverage and use to accomplish our big dreams. But you have to believe that too. If you think money is tied to your identity, if you don't have enough of it, you're not good enough, then you're going to have a hard time reaching the goals and the dreams because you're still fixated on what's in the bank account. But when you come forward with the mindset that I am abundantly wealthy and I will have all of my needs provided for, then you have to also expand what's possible, even if you don't see it in your bank account. Faith is literally believing what you cannot see. And I am a woman of faith. And so even when the bank account has $2, if God has told me I am going to have the most amazing 40th birthday party on an island with most of my family and friends, then I'm going to believe him and I'm going to plan accordingly and move forward accordingly and let the money come. And I'm not saying that figuratively. That literally happened to me 2 years ago when I turned 40. It was something that I had started planning 5 years prior, and I had a dream about it. I literally had a dream that I was celebrating a big milestone with family and friends on an island at the beach, which is my favorite place. And I told my husband about it, and he laughed because in my dream, I spent $1 million on this party.
Wow.
And the thing is, like, I was in the dream walking, and the front desk was like, "Miss Escarne, would you like to come settle the bill?" And I was like, "Yes, of course." And then they said, "Okay, it'll be $1 million." And I wrote the check with no hesitation. And I told my husband that, and he said, "Huh, what in the world would you do for $1 million at a party?" And I said to him, "It's funny that you say that, because when I had the dream, the first thing I thought was, if I wrote a check for $1 million, then I had more than $1 million in the bank. That was you see? So it's a perspective, it's mindset.
Yes.
And then from that one dream, every year I would have like other things come up, like watching a Netflix special on amazing vacations. And they talked about renting islands and how you could really do that for a vacation. And that literally started my search to finding the perfect place for the trip. And then, long story short, on my 40th, 72 people joined me in Antigua for an amazing vacation of 5 days. And we had 3 parties, and they exceeded all of my expectations. And believe it or not, it was the most expensive party I've ever paid for. It was not $1 million.
I was going to say.
It was not $1 million, but it was a true test of my faith, because every dollar I needed came from all kinds of places. Like, I'm telling you, people who owed me money and I forgot they owed me money paid me back. I'm talking about breakthrough in my business. It was also the same year that I literally was like, I'm leaving my job.
Yeah.
So many things happened, doing my own thing, and still had the money to pay for my most expensive venture at that time and be able to bring so much joy and memories to other people's lives. So that's why I emphasize money is a tool. It was the tool I used to create this vision that I got from a dream. And I think you need to have dreams, because that motivates you. You know, that motivated me. And my husband was very clear that if I wanted to have this party, I could not have it and leave us in a significant amount of debt. So I also had to fulfill that obligation to make sure my husband could live with it, you know?
Yeah.
So dream big or go home, definitely. Is the lesson.
Well, it's definitely true that, you know, financial women under any domestic violence, but especially financial abuse, you know, if they've been the forced breadwinner, or they've been the one that really has been put on an allowance for years, they've never had any independence, they've lost all these dreams that you've had and these really exciting things. And, you know, they kind of become dust as soon as they lose their financial autonomy or independence to someone else. And these dreams, like, gosh, having a party on an island, just seem like they are galaxies away. But I'm in my car right now, and I'm on an airplane right now, and I'm realizing, as I'm listening to you and listening to this show, in December, coming up on New Year's and those New Year's resolutions coming up, that, you know, wow, what were those big dreams I used to have back then? How would you suggest somebody just jumpstart into regenerating to this? It sounds like it's a lot about self-talk.
Yeah,
and self-trust.
Self-trust, but writing a vision down and making it clear. I'm a really big person that you have to first create a goal, and it doesn't have to be a 40th vacation on an island. It could very well be a vacation, period, right? Or a day off, right? Where I've planned to go to the spa, pamper myself, and pay for it in cash. Start small, start where you are, start with a goal that is achievable and attainable in a short amount of time. So some of you may know SMART goals. Those are the goals that you set, that they're measurable, they're attainable, they're related, you can relate to them, so you actually want to do them, and then they're time bound, right? And being specific helps. And so I would say start with 3 specific goals that you want to accomplish that you can do. And then that could be 2 hours at the spa in a month, right? Or in a quarter.
That's a great idea.
You know, and then literally work backwards. If the spa is going to require $200 and you're on a tight budget, then how much can you save per week until that spa appointment to pay for it in cash? If you have more cash flow and it's really just a matter of mindset and being able to spend it, then what you need to continue to tell yourself is, I have this money, I am abundant in resources and provision. I need to part with this money for it will be replaced, right? I'm saying affirmations like that because some people are selfish with their money, but honestly, that's not what really needs to happen. You have to let it go. And I've always learned when I let money go, whether through donation, spending it, it always comes back to me. And so you have to tell yourself, I'm spending this money, but it will come back to me. And the joy I get, the health I get, the peace I get is well worth the investment, right?
Yeah.
And
that's the operative word is
important. Yes,
investment.
well worth the investment, because I make it a point to go to spa, get a massage monthly, because that gives me peace. It's good for my body and makes me feel better. It's also an hour where I can just be with me and the therapist, the massage therapist, and nobody else. So whatever that is for you, come up with it. Start with 3 things. I like to do things in 3, so start with 3 things.
That's great.
And then you can add as you cross them off. Every time you achieve one, cross it off and replace it with another one that's even more audacious until you get to your $1 million party.
And I love the idea of, for me, if I was to pick my 3 goals, of picking things to get you out, as opposed to getting a thing. Like my 3 goals is I would love to have a great dress. Well, really the goal is to go to a concert where you would wear a great dress. and like encouraging you, if you're going to choose these goals, try to use things to get you out there and to experience these things. And kind of going into, you talk a lot about generational wealth, and that your mission as a financial coach and expert really is focusing on really looking at this big picture financially, and then you kind of deconstruct it with your various episodes on how to actually get there. But I see the purpose of money is that big overall picture. So how somebody who is starting over financially usually is kind of in the weeds mentally. And how do you get to looking at that broader future plan? Is it really just starting to look at these little components and not be intimidated by all these different options and say, I'm just learning new things and I don't have to do everything today? It just seems like that one little step you get from, okay, I've learned financial literacy. I now know how to balance a checkbook, which I didn't know how to do for 45 years. But now I got to go do something. Now you can do something with it.
Yes,
and that's where Acquania comes in.
Yes.
It's you're out of the weeds. You're getting out of the weeds. Even if you're still in the weeds, you need to see, like you say, you need to see yourself on that island, because that's you need that carrot. You've got to have a carrot.
Absolutely. I think you're right, but there is some forward thinking that we have to do. And I think we need to define some things for ourselves. So for example, when people come to me and they say, I need your help, I don't start off with all the problems that they might be facing. I start off with, what are your core values? What is most important to you? Because if I know what's most important to you, every recommendation I give you is going to align with that value or those goals. And so a lot of my clients will start out with a core values assessment where we talk about, why is money important to you? What are your goals for building generational wealth? And why are those goals important? And how does that translate in real life? For example, one of my core values is family. So I'm building generational wealth specifically for my family to thrive, not just survive. And then I also enjoy traveling and seeing the world and experiencing other cultures. And so I am also making money for my next vacation. I tell people all the time, I work for my next vacation. It is not to pay bills. It is not to pay Uncle Sam. It is for the next trip. And so I'm always going to look at things from the lens of, what am I sacrificing when I make this decision? And so we talked about the things that we do for ourselves. In my life, I am always going to value an experience over a physical thing. But there are others who will say, well, I really want a really nice cycling bike or a luxury purse or something else that they feel will give them that feeling of accomplishment. And so they may save their money to get a Louis bag. I don't think that's wrong. There's anything wrong with that. We just have different values of what we want to spend our money on, and that is totally okay. I just tell people make sure that when you're spending it, you can afford to do it, right? And so that's where saving and investing comes in, because if you're able to save $25 a month, then you can progressively go up to $250 a month and then $2,000 a month or whatever it is. But you have to develop the discipline, right? So once you know what's important to you, then you create goals that align with that. And then you create a plan that's going to help you be successful. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that the biggest generational wealth gift I got from my parents was education. And that's what you hear most, especially from the single moms. It's like, well, how do you want to build generational wealth? Well, I got to put those rotten kids through school. That's what I want to do. Well, that's the truth. You get those kids through college and you've got a much higher chance of generational wealth.
Yes. So. And you know what's so funny you say that? So when you said education, I immediately thought, how to manage my money education, which I tell people is absolutely free, right? If you set a good example, you can give that to your kids for free. But you're also right in that a college education can literally change the trajectory of someone's life. And some people will not agree with me on this one. Some people think everybody doesn't have to go to college, and I agree with you. Everybody does not have to go to college. It is not for everyone. However, statistics have proven over and over again that with an education, you make more over your lifetime. Oh, sure. You're more successful. You're exposed to more culture, environment. Sometimes different comfort zones are created out of that college experience. And there are just more people who have proven to be successful with a college education than people who have been proven to be multimillionaires without it, right? I'm not saying they don't happen, but statistically, you're in a much better position when you arm yourself with an education, because even entry-level jobs get paid more money with a college education.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody points to Steve Jobs. He dropped out of college, And, okay, 1 out of a billion.
Right.
Well, let's switch to how to destroy your entire financial future in one 24-hour period, and that's December 25th. One of the biggest stresses around this time of year, because we are in December right now, is that the purpose of money gets pretty unidentifiable when you end up at Christmas time. You got Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's, it's all kind of mushed together. And this is when you get into the season of gift giving for self-validation, yearly placating of extended people in your life. For example, you got to send flowers to that rotten aunt of yours every Christmas because she expects you to send it. I did that for so many years. And way over expressing your holiday spirit, maybe with thousands spent on decorations that you're going to use next year, but you actually never do. How do you start pulling back the brakes when you're spending on emotional obligations and emotional competitiveness every year? Because, honestly, everybody does it.
Yeah.
And, even the side dish you bring, it's like, wow, I got to do something extra. And, it does. Well, the issue like with financial abuse is women under abuse especially tend to overdo Christmas because it's a public opportunity to show everyone that things are okay with you. Things are okay with your marriage. Things are okay with your family. And you tend to overdo it. I did that myself probably for 2 decades. How do you keep in perspective that this is a holiday? And as you said, it's a holiday of faith. For some people, it really is just a holiday of festivity. But how do you either set that? Is this something you set as a goal in January? Say when Christmas comes up, I'm never spending more than this, and I'm going to find a way to tell people I'm never spending more than this, because I'm here to tell you, emotion just rides high this month. How do you put the brakes on?
Honestly, you have to set boundaries for yourself and expectations for others. I make it very clear, for example, in our family, we value trips over things. So a few years ago, it was super cold in DC for Christmas. And I was like, I do not want to be here for another Christmas ever again. I'm a warm girly. Give me a beach anytime.
Can I be in your family?
Yes.
Can I be adopted by your family?
Yes.
I want to
And
be in
so
your family. I'll be your.
that's the boundary we set, or goal. That's the goal we set, right? And I'll be honest, last year we didn't do it, but there was a reason for that. We didn't do it because the year before we did a huge 40th celebration in Antigua. But the thing that we did do was we discussed as a family, like, hey, this is something we can all agree to. So the kids didn't ask for expensive gifts and we didn't feel obligated to buy them. And the money went to plane tickets and hotel or Airbnb. And I start super early with telling my kids this so they don't forget, because kids can forget. So we start planning Christmas in like June or July. And
Smart.
we try to solidify where we're going by September. And then we also finalize who's coming with us so that the family members who are coming can budget for it. They have about 6 months to pay for it. I tend to front the cost and then get reimbursed. So that makes everyone able to do payment plans. But then I also negotiate a payment plan for myself if the vendor will allow. And so, for example, for Christmas this year, we're going somewhere nice and warm, and I negotiated with the owner of the home to do 2 payment plan for the house, but I wanted it paid before Christmas, so we did it by November. And that helps make sure that in January, I'm not like, oh crap, I have these bills or credit cards. I'm like, nope, it was paid in cash, it is done. And then we set realistic expectations with everyone else too. So I do not send, Auntie so and so flowers just because she wants to. And I used to, and I
usually
used to,
mother-in-laws.
I used to feel obligated to send Christmas cards every year. And then I cut that out too. I was like, you know what? No, if I don't have the time or my kids don't want to take the pictures, I'm not going to stress myself to do cards and shipping and stamps and licking. I'm going to literally just call people and say, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. So sometimes we send out a New Year's card and sometimes we don't. But that's literally like, I've just set expectations, or I've told people I'm not doing that anymore. And you got to live with it. I think women need to do the same thing.
And where are you going, by the way? Where are you going?
Tulum, Mexico.
Where?
Tulum, Mexico.
Where in Mexico? Is that where?
Tulum.
Mexico?
Yeah, it's near Cancun. It's an hour and a half from Cancun. Yeah.
Oh, how fantastic. Go to the Mayan ruins.
Yes.
So what does the purpose of money have planned for 2025? You're going to try to get on the Mars ship? Is that the next one? Because, we're going to the moon. Well, we're going back to the moon in like 18 months. So I figure...
I don't know. 2025, I'm hopeful. I'm excited. I'll be going into... I'm in between my second and third year of entrepreneurship, full-time entrepreneurship. So seeing what else God has in store for me has been really exciting. It's definitely my most strategic year. I am going to do more strategic planning because I went to a retreat at the beginning of December where we did some strategic planning with other women entrepreneurs. And so I'm really excited about watching that plan unfold. And I am going to really focus on quarterly projects. So if you've ever read the 12-week year, really trying to do a whole bunch in one 12-week period that most people will only do in a year to get more stuff done. And I want to read more. And I already have some trips booked. So I am going to continue to travel more. So 2025 is going to look like a lot more solo travel because I did my first solo/family trip this year where I arrived earlier than everyone else. So I could solo travel. And now I'm going to do more of that in 2025. Wow,
that is just so exciting. And I'm so thrilled to have you here for the first time. I really hope I can snag you as a regular guest a couple times a year.
Of course.
Because it's just so motivating. Those of us who are starting over financially after long-term bad situations or abuse, just to feel the excitement of, oh, yeah, I'd like to go to an island. And often that's what it takes. It's often just the osmosis of being exposed to people and new ideas. And I can't recommend your show enough for anybody, even if you're just developing financial literacy now at any age and you are just starting over. This is really a show you want to make sure you list as one of your favorites. We'll also be listing Acquania's Purpose of Money podcast as a survivor resource. And we will also be listing it in various other resources on our webpage. And I want to ask one final tip. What's your final tip to remember today for someone who is a survivor of financial abuse, starting over with nothing, but wants to grab on that brass ring of developing wealth?
Yes, you got this. You got this. You got this. You already did the hardest part, which is remove yourself from an environment that wasn't serving you. Now take back your power, take back your purse, right? You have the ability to make your financial decisions. You have the ability to live your best life. You have support in this community to help you. And definitely don't be afraid to explore. I think sometimes we're so focused on doing what everyone else is doing. We think that's the only way to do it. But I think you need to find what works for you. So now that you have your freedom, I want you to pursue your true self. And that's my best advice. And, like I said, don't be afraid to pivot, set boundaries, and have fun.
Thank you so much. This is Acquania Escarne, and this is the Purpose of Money podcast. You can also reach her through her website. I am going to link several links for her below. And thank you again. We hope to have you back. And this is Lori G on Speaking Out on Financial Abuse. Thanks again.
You're welcome.